Hey everyone, it's Alexis, and I know the lighting looks a little bit crazy, but it's actually like 7 o'clock in the morning here, but I just couldn't wait to film this video. So April was kind of a slow month for me. I really didn't read a lot at all. If you guys don't know, I have a small handmade jewelry and craft business called Lanier's Jewelry and Crafts, and I pretty much spent the majority of the month working on that. Hold on, let me take my glasses off. I cannot see, but I feel like when I have my glasses on, the glare is so strong, so I'm just gonna risk being like for just a few minutes. But in April, I completed a total of 7 books. Before I get to my May TBR, I just want to go through the books just a little bit. The first book I completed was called A Friend in the Dark, and literally loved it. I would say that's a good 5-star read. I started that book towards the end of March, and then I finished it at the very beginning of April. I believe it's a thriller. It's an interesting book. It details the narrative from the perspective of a recently separated woman who pretty much is familyless. Her daughter has pretty much sided with the husband, and she's just kind of alone. So it starts off with her celebrating her birthday by herself, and then she's just kind of thinking about this old college crush she used to have. This guy was known as a player. They kind of like had a thing one night, but then the guy cut short, and then she just kind of ended up with the person that she's with now. They've been married for decades. As the book progresses, there are so many plot twists, so many turns, and there is a happy ending for the family. So without spoiling too much, I would say that if you like a well-written thriller, I would recommend that. It's something that isn't hard to understand, and everything, in my opinion, makes sense. There's nothing that made me feel like, because sometimes when you read books like that and they try to like force that plot twist, it's just like, girl, I don't even understand like where this came from. But I feel like A Friend in the Dark just has everything just like very like well balanced. The next book I read was The Door. So The Door is actually a book that I found at the library. It was in the kids section, so I was like, let's go for it. This is something that is fiction, but as I read it, it had a lot of elements of fantasy in it. So The Door is basically a book that details the perspective of a girl who finds this like portal. And one thing about The Door, I think it's a great concept, but the way it was executed made it so confusing in my opinion. And I actually did look at the Goodreads reviews of it before I finished, and it's one of those things where I hate to say it, but it really did make sense why it was rated the way it was, because again, it had so many good points, but I just feel like the way it was put together, it just made like no sense at all. And from what I get, she learned so much about her family. I'm trying not to spoil it. She learned so much about her family. They're not who she thinks she is. There's this other world, and it's a metaphor for the afterlife or death or something like that. And there are some corrupt people within that world. Again, great concept. Something that definitely feels like I don't know, like the type of movie that you might see or something. But I just felt like the way it was written, it was kind of hard to really follow it. So exactly how to describe it, I'm not sure. It's something that, like, again, the idea is something I would recommend, but this particular book, I just don't think it was executed well. So I think honestly, out of 5 stars, I would give it maybe a 3. Like, if it was written better, I think it would definitely be a good 4-star read, but it was just hard to follow at some points. The next book I read after this was Ace of Spades. 6-star read. As you guys know, I've been hyping up this book called Hello Stranger, which, don't get me wrong, Hello Stranger, it eats bad. But I think Ace of Spades topped Hello Stranger. Ace of Spades, I mean, the hype it had, it just wasn't enough. Like, the book was 10 times better than the hype. Ace of Spades is from the perspective of 2 black students in this pretty much all white school. It's a private academy, something like that. And it starts off with this whole, like, the guy, he's like this awkward loner, just has one friend. He's also someone who is gay, and to be like a gay black man, and he lives in the rougher parts of town, unlike the black girl who comes from pretty decent money, but again, she has to work for that status because she's the black girl, she has something to prove. So I think that the way it was written, it gives you different perspectives, but it shows you that no matter what side you come from, that you will still have some struggles as a black person. So one thing I didn't realize coming into it is how heavy race will be talked about. I didn't realize that Ace of Spades was even going to focus on race or have stuff like queer elements, and I love that she did that. Like the way she discussed race and the way she displayed the LGBTQ plus community, I feel like she did it so perfectly. The race aspect alone, it's one of those things where as someone who didn't read about it before, I was just like, it just went from like this, oh, like he's an awkward guy, she's the popular girl, blah blah blah, someone's bothering them, to like, oh, this is what we're doing. And it's like once you're in it, it's just like, oh, you're just thrown in it. And it's one of those books where it's like, not to sound so like subjective or whatever, but it's like, if you don't like this book, you have to be a very like obtuse person, because it's like, it was written perfectly, it was very relatable, it was written in a way that like I feel like any generation could like read it, even though it is kind of ideally written in like modern, contemporary times. But I just feel like, again, the purpose, the lessons that were in it, like there's nothing bad you can say about the book. Everything, like, it flowed perfectly. Like, what can you not say about it? Like, it was a great book, and I was not expecting to read such a heavy but also funny and quirky and also relatable and crazy story. But it's one of those books where like I would read it again. So this is a 6-star read, my first 6-star read ever, and I would literally recommend it to anybody. The book I read after that is It Started With a Kiss. I'm not even gonna sit here and lie to y'all, this is the worst book I've ever read in my life. No shade to the author, but it, as somebody who was already not like super big into romance, specifically smut, it's one of those things where if I read romance, I like a very genuine, like, we're getting to know each other, we just happen to fall in love type of thing. I don't like romance where it's like, it's trying too hard to be adult entertainment. Like, this book was so filthy, and in a sense, I think she wrote it in a way where it's like, the characters, the way that they carried themselves were so accurate to how trashy guys, trashy women are. But for me, that's just not something I subscribe to. The whole like, oh, like she's so hot, it's just so disgusting to me. And so again, not too much on the author. I can see why a lot of people like this book, but it's just not for me. If you're someone who you like smut, and especially if you don't really like much of a plot, this is the perfect book for you. But for me, it was such a hard read, and I guess I only got through it because I had to take it back to the library. So this took me about 3-4 weeks to read. I want to be open-minded. I want to give this author another chance because I hate not liking a book, and especially because I rarely don't like books. But I was trying to be even more open-minded because, again, this is not my ideal genre. I don't really go for books like that. But it's one of those things where I've read stuff with spice in it. I've read a little bit of smut, and I've been able to enjoy those books. But I just feel like this book in particular, it just, from beginning to end, it just wasn't my type of book. So I would give this book a 1 out of 5, to be honest with you. The next book I read was Never Lie. This is my first Sister Frida book. I've heard so much about Frida, and as somebody who has been getting into a lot of thrillers because of like my free Prime reads, I was like so interested to get into Miss Frida, but I didn't know what to start with. I heard a lot of good stuff about Never Lie, but the thing is, once I started reading Never Lie, I heard so many people who have been reading Miss Frida said that the Never Lie was like low-key the best one. So now I'm like, okay, if I read her other books, like, am I gonna be not as satisfied? Because like, is Never Lie just like the bar? So I am looking forward to reading her other books, but it's like, I don't want to feel like you know. One thing about Never Lie though, it was such a great book. It is written in the perspective of a couple and they're meeting up, or at least they believe they're meeting up with this realtor to check out this home. It's really no way I can describe this without spoiling it, but this is the craziest book, and the way she wrote it, you would not expect a single twist. I actually did read the Goodreads reviews after, and I was so disappointed to see the negative reviews because everyone who rated it negatively, I looked at the points that they were describing, and as somebody who is a psychology major, loves psychology, she referenced a lot of aspects of it. The novel also references a missing woman who was a psychiatrist, right? And that's a big part of the story. Again, can't talk about it without giving it away. There are some things in there that if you know these conditions, it makes sense. Genuinely, it really does make sense. So I guess for me, it didn't bother me, but I can understand how maybe some people who aren't familiar with that, they're like, okay, well, how did this plot twist happen? Because there were no signs of it before, but it was. But I think the only thing that could have been better, maybe she should have slowly introduced those plot twists, and I think a lot more people would be understanding of what that means. So like in my case, of course I get it, but I can get if you're not familiar with those conditions or stuff like that, or especially if you're not really used to this genre, how plot twists happen. But for the most part, it's a pretty solid book. I think the only thing about it is that the plot twists were kind of rushed, and I wish that would have just been a little bit longer. I feel like the whole book was good from beginning to end, but I feel like a lot of action happened, and from what I remember, like the last 50-ish pages, really 100, but I would still recommend to anybody. I would give that book I would say 4 stars. The next book I read after that was Alex Rider's Stormbreaker. Alex Rider is one of those series where there are plenty of books, but there's like this main trilogy. So Stormbreaker is the first book in the trilogy. So I have this one buddy, she loves Alex Rider down, and she has been trying to get me to read it for the longest time. And I'm like, I know I read an Alex Rider book a long time ago, but I just can't remember which one. And as I was reading, I was like, I believe this is the one. Since this is the first book, it basically describes the life of this ordinary 14-year-old boy, Alex Rider. He is an orphan, lives with his uncle. Uncle passes away. Stuff hits the fan. He learns that his uncle was this secret spy, and then he's forced to be a spy, and then so many crazy things happen. But I would say that this book is marketed towards kids, and one thing about the kids genre, people sleep on it, but I feel like kids books are very like short, simple, straight to the point, and I think that is something that is good for not just kids, but of any target audience. If you are somebody who is trying to get in the books or anything, I would definitely recommend kids section. This book, it was something that had action, it had a good plot line, it wasn't rushed, wasn't hard to understand, it was just like a well-rounded book. So I would say it's not the type of book that's like I'm gonna think about it till the day I die, but it's definitely something that like is a very solid, like good all-around book. So I would give this book a good 4 stars. The last book that I completed in April was this book called I Hunt Killers. So if you guys don't know, I've been doing this challenge where my friends pick out library books. So I did intend on finishing all these books earlier, but again, just because of my schedule for April, things just hit the fan. So I picked out 4 books, my buddy picked out 3 books, and then I picked out 1. So I got to finish I Hunt Killers, and I Hunt Killers is written from the perspective of this boy whose father was a serial killer who is currently in jail. So he's living with his paternal grandmother, and she is a hot mess. At some point in the book, the paternal aunt tries to like get him and stuff like that. But anyways, throughout this book, there are so many murders happening, and you find out at some point in the book that they're like following the guidelines of his father. The way it's written, it's like he keeps saying like, I don't want to be like my dad, I want to be like my dad, but it's like, are you like your dad? Like, because me, no matter who, like, let's say my dad was a serial killer. If I'm not a serial killer, it's not gonna bother me. It's not gonna haunt me to think I might be like, if you're thinking like that, you're having ideas like that. And like, don't get me wrong, people have trauma. If you grow up with someone who is manipulative or abusive, like, of course that's gonna affect you. But it's like, he's just like, I don't want to be like my dad, I'm gonna be a serial killer. But the thought of harming people doesn't exactly scare me. I don't really know how to connect with humans, and it's like, okay. Like, sometimes I read a book. A good book to me is like when an author leads you in like one direction, but the plot is actually in this direction. But it's like you don't know that until the plot twist. But I feel like this author is trying to write so hard, like, oh, he might be the serial killer, and it's like, but is he? Like, why? It's like every page was just like, I don't want to be my dad. And it's just the way it was written. It was kind of aggravating after a while. I don't want to be a serial killer, my dad. And it's just like, honey, if you want to be a killer, just be a killer. Like, get on my nerves at this point. He has a dumb girlfriend, and his girlfriend is dumb. His best friend is naive, good boy, caught up with the wrong crowd, bless his heart. I feel like the way the book is, I mean, it was nice to see, like, who is the killer, and it's just crazy because I hate books when I'm not rooting for anybody. That's how I felt with It Started With the Kiss, because it's like, I don't care about the main character, and I really don't care about these side characters either. I think all of y'all are annoying, and I think all of y'all just suck. Like, none of y'all have anything that makes me want to, like, care for y'all. I feel like when I read books like that, I just feel so bored. Again, I will mention, as someone who has studied psychology, the way that this author was trying to depict trauma and growing up in an abusive household, it was so poorly executed. Because it's like, yes, there's some certain things, like, I don't want to be like my abuser. I don't want to be like what I witnessed growing up. But the way it was written, it's like, this is so unrealistic. And it's just like, the book it wasn't bad. Like, it's something that you could read, but it wasn't something that, it's just something that's like, I finished the book. Yay. Let's go back to the library, put it away. It's just, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't good. It doesn't make me want to read the sequels. So I would say that this book, honestly, I would give it maybe 2 stars. That's pretty much it. And in April, I had a couple of in-progress books. So I had this book called Aristotle and Dante. It's a long title. I just remember Aristotle and Dante. I have this book called Unwind, and I've been enjoying that. And then I picked out for myself The Divorce Prada. And then I started this digital read, The Girl Who Was Taken. None of these books are really like, besides Unwind, none of these books are really like screaming at me to be read, and I think that sucks coming from a reading slump and also being busy, because it's like, now it's like, if I have a good book, like Ace of Spades, for example, I read 412 pages in like 4 hours. But if I have a bad book, like It Started With a Kiss, it took me like 8 hours to read 200 something pages. So with these books, it's like, they're not bad, but it's like, they're not like screaming at me. And the fact that I've had a few 5-star and a 6-star read this year, it's just like, my bar is here. I think I'm at that point where I'm kind of tired of experimenting with my reads, and I actually just want to read what I like. I hope that May brings me a lot of good books. If you guys didn't see, or I don't know if I posted this before, y'all will see in my like little library haul or like my vlog, I don't know which one comes first. A few weeks ago, I went to the bookstore in my hometown. I've actually never been there. It's called the Book Tavern, and I bought a few of these books. So I bought the Letters of Enchantment series, I got the Legendborn series, but I just got the first book, and then I got the Skyland series by Kennedy Ryan, Dune, and then from Book of the Month, I got my first book, and it was All We Were Promised. So I'm excited to read all of those, but I kind of want to read these first. So I have my Harry Potter series up here. I'm not ready for that. I have the Five Nights at Freddy's series, I have the Hunger Games, and then I have just a few books I've had over the last few years, including some that people have let me borrow or given me. For my May TBR, oh, this is so exciting. For my May TBR, I have, oh my god, where'd I put it? As you guys saw a few weeks ago, I did my TBR, which I pulled from this container right here, my main TBR jar. But I told you guys that I originally had this as my TBR jar. So for the 15 prompt cards I pulled, I put them in here. For the month of May, I am going to pull, I'm just going to say like 8. I'm going to pull 8 of these prompts. And then when June comes, I'll pull the other 7. I was going to do like 5 April, 5 May, 5 June, but I kind of messed that up. So I'm going to pull 8 now and pick whatever I get. So I'm kind of nervous about this. The first one is social media recommendation. The second one is historical fiction. The third one is a random book in my TBR. Fourth one is contemporary romance. The fifth one is a book I've been avoiding. The sixth one is superhero or supervillain. The seventh one is a color, and the last one is relatively old, anything that was published between 10 to 50 years ago. So now that I have my 8 cards picked out, I am going to pull a few from here, and then whatever I can't find in my personal small selection, I will be pulling from the library. So for historical fiction, I was so happy I got this book because last month for my book of the month read, I got All We Were Promised, and I already knew I was going to read that this month, so I'm not really a big historical fiction type of girly, but I look forward to this book. For book I have been avoiding the Harry Potter series and also the Hunger Games series, but I think I'm going to start with the Hunger Games series. And I'm going to pick the first book, The Hunger Games, and not the prequel. And the last one that I'm going to pull from my physical TBR is going to be social media recommendation, and that's going to be the book Legendborn. I've heard so many good things about this book. So for the other ones, I will be going to the library and give you guys a little update on that, so I'll insert the clips here. Hey everybody, it's Future Alexis, and I went to the library this morning, and I actually just got done going to an eye appointment. So if you're wondering where my glasses are, they're still there waiting for my subscription to be renewed. So as I showed you guys last time, I picked a few from my shelf, but I actually added on 2 more. I added on The Fault in Our Stars for my contemporary romance read, and then I've been sitting on this for a long time too. I read Dan Brown's Origin, and I wanted to try out the Da Vinci Code since that's one of his best according to people. So this fits my relatively old, anywhere between 10 to 50 years old. And then today I went to the library. For my color, I ended up choosing a color that was either gray or brown. I wasn't really feeling the gray, so that's why I rolled it again and I got brown. So I actually found 2 brown reads at the library. So the first one I saw was Golden, which I believe is also contemporary romance. It looks interesting, but yeah, I just saw the cover. I was like, okay, I'll just give it a try. And then I also found this one. I know it's just supposed to do one, but I'm like, both of these look interesting. This one is called Grown, and I like that it is an African American read. And then for my last pick, it was Superhero Supervillain. So every time I go in this particular library, I always see this one book, and it's like an African American, kind of like, it's giving Miles Morales, but like bootleg, but I always see it, and this is the first time they have not had that book up, so I was kind of salty. So I found this one. It's called Marvelous World, and this is the first book of the series, so this will be my superhero supervillain read. So before I finalize this, I'm going to go through each one and tell you guys exactly why I chose it and what it's about. So I guess I'll start with the library books first. So Marvelous World by Troy Klee. It is, I'm going to read the front cover. Louis Proof is a warrior kid. He loves listening to hip-hop, racing, radio-controlled cars, and hanging out with his best friend Brandon. Then a mysterious letter invites him to visit the local junkyard. There he finds a secret underground amusement park like no other in existence. This is the best day of Lewis's life. The park even has the most amazing race course for radio-controlled cars. Lewis starts racing right away. It's a close contest. He's about to activate his nitro boost to take the lead when it's the worst day of Lewis's life. Without warning or reason, 13-year-old Louis Proof falls into a coma due to a virus of a mysterious celestial origin. When he awakens 3 months later, the world that he once knew and loved is totally out of control. He will learn that his illness is connected to everything that is wrong, and that it's not only his responsibility but his destiny to set things right. This story is a mega dramatic, remarkably true, super action fantasy. Get ready. So I chose this for superhero supervillain because I was desperate. Like, I had the hardest time figuring out what I wanted to read, but it was giving like, oh, this kid is trying to figure out how to save the world. It's giving like young superhero vibes, and I just feel like there's been like a rise in that in the last few years. Like, you see a lot of like teenage boy and even teenage girl that's just living a regular life, and then boom. I feel like the first one that was like really popular like that was Alex Rider, but I feel like by the time we get to like the Miles Morales era, that's when it was really like, oh my gosh. And I feel like I've seen a surge, and especially like African American teenage boys living regular life, and then boom. So back to this book, Grown by Tiffany Jackson. Sorry for the glare, by the way. Corey Fields is dead. When Enchanted Jones wakes with blood on her hands and zero memory of the previous night, no one, the police and Corey's fans included, has more questions than she does. All she really knows is that this isn't how things are supposed to be. Corey's Enchanted's ticket to stardom. Before there was a dead body, Enchanted was an aspiring singer struggling with her tight-knit family's recent move to the suburbs while trying to find her place as one of the few black girls in high school. But then, legendary R&B artist Corey Fields spots her in an audition, and suddenly her dream of becoming a professional singer takes flight. Enchanted is dazzled by Corey's luxurious life, but soon her dream turns to a nightmare. Behind Corey's charm and star power lurks a dark side, and one that wants to control her every move with rage and consequences. Except now, he's dead. And the police are at the door. Who killed Corey Fields? All signs point to Enchanted. So as you guys know, I love mystery books, and when I saw this, I thought it was going to be like something else. I did not know this was going to be low-key murder mystery. So the fact that it's kind of like African American read, but also plays into my favorite genre, that's something that I know I love. Then I also got golden for my brown cover. 17-year-old Parker Frost may be a distant relative of poet Robert Frost, but she has never taken the road less traveled. Valedictorian and quintessential good girl, she's about to graduate high school without ever having kissed her crush or broken the rules. So when fate drops a mystery in her lap, one that might be the key to uncovering the truth about A-Town mystery, she decides to take a chance. So this is giving more of like, oh, it is young adult fiction, but it's like, I guess it's mainly romance, but then I kind of overlooked the mystery part. I didn't even like notice that earlier. So it's romance and mystery, which again I think I may love. This is one book from my personal collection, The Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown. While in Paris, Harvard symbologist Robert Langdon is awakened by a phone call in the dead of the night. The elderly curator of the Louvre has been murdered inside the museum, his body covered in baffling symbols. As Langdon and gifted French cryptologist Sophie Neveu sort through the bizarre riddles, they are stunned to discover a trail of clues hidden in the works of Leonardo da Vinci, clues visible for all to see and yet ingeniously disguised by the painter. Even more startling, the late curator was involved in the Priory of Sion, a secret society whose members included Sir Isaac Newton, Victor Hugo, and Da Vinci, and he guarded a breathtaking historical secret. Unless Langdon and Neveu can decipher the labyrinth puzzle while avoiding the faceless adversary whose shadows every move, the explosive ancient truth will be lost forever. So I got this from my relatively old because I just wanted an excuse to read it. I got this book about 4 years ago. This one and Origin for class. I ended up reading Origin for class, but I still got Da Vinci codes that seemed really interesting. When I was younger, I was obsessed with Da Vinci because one thing about Da Vinci is that, yes, he is very talented as an artist and everything, but if you know his story, you know that he is so complex and you know about the lore about him. He's just encrypted. So Dan Brown, for at least this Robert Langdon series, Robert Langdon is just always going on these crazy adventures. If you like something that's action but not like trying too hard to be like a Mission Impossible type thing, something that's like suspenseful action, I definitely think you will love this series. Some people don't like Dan Brown's style of writing, which I think Origin wasn't bad because his latest work, but some people say some of his earlier works had some things that kind of controversial, like sexism and stuff like that, but I don't really know because I haven't read them. I'll say Origin is great. It's something that like it's a lot going on, and it's a thick book. These are like 400, 500, 600 pages, so it's like it takes you on a journey, but it's not boring. Like, it never feels like So I'm really excited to read this. This has been 4 years in the making. That's crazy. Next book is The Fault in Our Stars. So I've actually wanted to read this since it like really became popular. So this is a book I loaned from my buddy. So for this, I use this for my contemporary romance book. The Fault in Our Stars. Despite the tumor-shrinking medical miracle that has brought her a few years, Hazel's never been anything but terminal, her final chapter inscribed upon diagnosis. But when a generous plot twist named Augustus Waters suddenly appears at Cancer Kids Support Group, Hazel's story is about to be completely rewritten. So I've never seen the movie or anything like that. I'm someone that I like to read the book before I see the movie, because if it just throws me off. I want to see what this is about, and then maybe later on I will watch the movie. Same thing when I get to the Hunger Games series and then the Harry Potter series and all that. So I'm really excited for this. 10 years in the making. This is another one that I pulled out this morning from my personal collection. I kind of have been looking at this on my bookshelf and I'm like, dang, I look, you want to read it. So I got this for my random book in my TBR, so I just and it's actually so funny because I did choose randomly. At first I was going to go based on my Goodreads TBR, so I had a lot of books in there, but it was just like too much or just in the middle of the series. So I was like, well, let me just look on my personal bookshelf. And after I pulled out all of these, I was like, well, let me see what's next. And the first two I got like books that were in the middle of the series, so I'm like, I can't read that. And then on my last one I got the sequel to this, so I was like, I'll just read this. So Divine Rivals, I'm so excited for this. Even though this is like a romance fantasy, I believe, it's something that sounds really interesting. When two young rival journalists find love through a magical connection, they must face the depths of heck in a war between gods to seal their fate forever. After centuries of sleep, the gods are warring again, but 18-year-old Iris Winnow just wants to hold her family together. Her mother is suffering from addiction, her brother is missing from the front lines. Her best bet is to win the columnist promotion at the Oath Gazette. To combat her worries, Iris writes letters to her brother and slips them beneath her wardrobe door, where they vanish into the hands of Roman Kit, her cold and handsome rival at the paper. When he anonymously writes Iris back, the two of them forge a connection that will follow Iris all the way to the front lines of battle for her brother, the fate of mankind, and love. Divine Rivals is an epic enemies to lovers fantasy novel filled with hope and heartbreak and the unparalleled power of love. I'm not really big on romance, but something like this, I tend to like romance when it's like not the whole plot. Like, I like something that's a plot and then you have characters that genuinely like start to fall in love. So something like this, I can get behind that. But I notice every time I look at a romance book that I like, it's never just like that's all it is. It's so much more. You have so much complexity to the characters. You get to know them, see their story and everything. So I really like that. Next is Hunger Games. So I don't know if you guys remember, but when I chose this, I didn't know if I wanted to just read the first book or the prequel. So I chose this because I was thinking, like, let me read it in the order of people who were reading it when they came out. So I chose this for my book I've been avoiding. In the ruins of a place once known as North America lies the nation of Panem, a shining capital surrounded by 12 outlying districts. The capital is harsh and cruel and keeps the districts in line by forcing them all to send one boy and one girl between the ages of 12 and 18 to participate in the annual Hunger Games, a fight to the death on live TV. 6-year-old Katniss Everdeen regards it as a death sentence, but when she steps forward to take her sister's place in the games. But Katniss has been close to death before, and survival for her is second nature. Without really meaning to, she becomes a contender, but if she is to win, she will have to start making choices that weigh survival against humanity and life against love. That sounds so good. I can kind of see why that's popular, but I'm not really familiar with any of these authors writing besides Dan Brown, so to me all of them sound good, but for me it's just like, how's it written, you know? Then I got Legendborn. So again, this is from my personal collection. I got this for a social media recommendation. So Legendborn is a series. I just got the first book in it because I just wanted to see how it was, but it looks very interesting. I've heard nothing but good reviews about it. After her mother dies in an accident, 6-year-old Bree Matthews wants nothing to do with her family memories or childhood home. A residential program for bright high schoolers at UNC Chapel Hill seems like the perfect escape until Bree witnesses a magical attack her very first night on campus. A flying demon feeding on human energies. A secret society of so-called Legendborn students who hunt the creatures down. And a mysterious teenage mage who calls himself a Merlin and who attempts and fails to wipe Bree's memory of everything she saw. The mage's failure reveals Bree's own unique magic and a buried memory with a hidden connection. The night her mother died, another Merlin was at the hospital. Now that Bree knows there's more to her mother's death than was on the police report, she'll do whatever it takes to find out the truth, even if that means infiltrating the Legendborn as one of their initiates. She recruits Nick, a self-exiled Legendborn with his own grudge against the group, and the reluctant partnership pulls them deeper into the society's secrets and closer to each other. But when the Legendborn reveals themselves as a descendants of King Arthur's knights and explains that a magical war is coming, Bree has to decide how far she'll go for the truth and whether she should use her magic to take the society down or join the fight. So, in looking at Legendborn, I knew a little bit about it, enough to know that it's fantasy, like a regular girl kind of thrown into this world, which I tend to love that. But I didn't know it was like that. That sounds crazy, but I love it. And then lastly, we have All We Were Promised, which is my first book of the month book. So All We Were Promised is something that I really don't go for. It is historical fiction, and I did choose historical fiction for this month. It is about the past of 3 young black women in pre-Civil War Philadelphia unexpectedly and dangerously collide in a debut novel inspired by the explosive history of a divided city. Philadelphia, 1837. When Charlotte escaped from the crumbling White Oaks plantation down south, she expected freedom to feel different from her former life as an enslaved housemaid. After all, Philadelphia is supposed to be the birthplace of American liberty. Instead, she's led the way playing servant to her white passing father as they both attempt to hide their identities from slave catchers who would destroy their new lives. Longing to break away, Charlotte befriends Nell, a budding abolitionist from one of Philadelphia's wealthiest black families. Just as Charlotte starts to envision a future, a familiar face from her past reappears. Evie, her friend from White Oaks, has been brought to... I don't know if y'all can hear it, but my dog is whining because he's like in the other room. He's locked up right now. It's so... He can see me. I didn't know he could see... Oh my god. But as Charlotte and Nell conspire to rescue her in a city engulfed by race riots and attacks on abolitionists, they soon discover the fighting for Evie's freedom may cost them their own. All We Were Promised is a story of 3 women in vastly different circumstances, the rebel, the socialite, and the fugitive, risking everything for one another in an American city, straining to live up to its loftiest ideals. And with the book of the month, they also give you a bookmark. So this one says pages that say number, and the other side is book of the month. And then it also comes with this cute pamphlet. So this one is extra special to me. It's my first book of the month book. So I will be reading more, but these are the main ones I want to read for this month. To hit my unofficial goal of trying to get 100 books, I need to read at least 11 books for the month. So I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, and then I still have these two for my reading challenge to read. So it's Devil Wears Prada and then Aristotle and Dante, and this long behind name. So I will be reading at least these. This may, I don't know, because I kind of want to read the books I've purchased slowly. So I don't know if it'll take all of May. I may be able to get some more books in, but I know I'm going to read at least these. So that'll be exactly 11. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you guys enjoy whatever your May reads are. I hope I can get done with this whole stack by the end of May. But with that being said, thank you guys for watching, and y'all have an amazing day.